Murphy, Capitol Hill Bureau Chief for PoliticsDaily.com. Love that website. And with us in New York, CNN senior legal analyst Jeffery Toobin, who we always love.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for joining us this morning. And this is a very important story because every few years we see there's another test for Roe versus Wade. They typically happen in the states. This time it's Nebraska. Can you walk us through some of the specifics here as to why this is so important?
Well, this is two provisions in this law are very important. The first is that it bans all abortions after 20 weeks. Previously, the point of viability has been the significant dividing point, and that's usually between 22 and 24 weeks. So this is the earliest that abortions have ever been banned by a state. The second provision requires women to get mental health screening before they have an abortion on the theory that they could suffer some sort of psychological damage down the line. That's a very controversial idea if they have an abortion. So it's the screening process and the 20-week limit.
And there's also this change that really is potentially going to affect this debate nationally, in that for so long the focus was on the viability of a fetus, and now it's about whether or not a fetus could feel pain. And I'm just curious, it seems like this conversation really hasn't been had on a national level, and Nebraska's forcing it.
Well, that's right. And the last time the Supreme Court really took up a big abortion case was back in 1993, where Justice Kennedy helped write the opinion that upheld what they called the core of Roe v. Wade. Justice Kennedy said a state could not ban abortions outright, but how much of a restriction and under what justification, that's been up in the air, and now we've had turnover in the court. The court is more conservative. Justice Kennedy wrote an opinion upholding a late-term abortion ban a couple of years ago. So clearly the court has moved to the right on abortion. Whether it's moved so far to the right that they would approve this law, that's what we'll be finding out probably in about a year.
And Patricia, in Washington, I mean, this case is falling in our laps right in the midst of a Supreme Court selection process for President Obama. And obviously, this case is going to be talked about during the confirmation process. How do you think this is going to affect the next few weeks when it comes to the president's selection for a Supreme Court nominee? We'll also ask Jeff about this. But what do you think, Patricia?
I think it is going to put the issue of abortion squarely in the middle of that debate. And in terms of who the president chooses, we know that this debate, this decision will most likely be decided by the Supreme Court. At some point, there absolutely will be a constitutional challenge to it. And so for senators looking at who these nominees are going to be, pro-life groups and pro-choice groups are going to go through each and every one of the details and try to divine exactly where they would come down on an issue like this. And it will remind them that the issue of abortion is not settled, and that it will be decided by the Supreme Court, and who the president picks will be an essential piece of that. So if you look at the passions that were part of the health care debate, I will call that the calm before the storm going into this.
And Jeff, I mean, obviously, as Patricia mentioned, as you mentioned, this is going to be challenged. This is ripe for a Supreme Court challenge. I mean,
it is, and there are almost certainly 4 votes to strike this down, 4 votes to uphold it. Anthony Kennedy almost certainly will be the swing vote, as he so often is. The confusing thing, the frustrating thing about abortion politics and Supreme Court nominations is that it's all sort of done in code.
Right.
The nominees,
very little is known when the nominees come forward as to what they feel on this issue.
If you look at the sort of top nominees, Merrick Garland, Elena Kagan, they have said virtually nothing about abortion. Right. During the top possible nominees. They have said virtually nothing about abortion throughout their careers. It's assumed that they are pro-choice in their orientation. And once someone is nominated, in the congressional hearings, they almost always say, well, that issue may come before the court, so I can't really comment on it.
We always hear the phrase settled law.
Right. That John Roberts and Samuel Alito used the question of settled law, but law is settled until it's unsettled. And this Supreme Court in particular has shown no hesitation into overruling precedents. They certainly did it earlier this year in the Citizens United case about the First Amendment right of corporations. So settled law is a partial answer, but it's not a full answer.
And Patricia, just to take this to the 2010 campaign, we have a very important midterm election season coming up very shortly. Does this bring the abortion issue back to the forefront? I mean, is this going to be talked about in district after district between Democratic and Republican candidates? And in many cases, Republican candidates who are more conservative because of the Tea Party movement that's happening in this country right now. I mean, this is ripe for the campaign season that's just weeks away.
It absolutely is. And if you look again, you mentioned the question of what would happen in Republican primaries. There will be a question in every Republican primary debate. What would you do? How would you vote on this? When do you think life begins? So this puts the abortion debate squarely in the middle. And we haven't seen a whole lot of culture wars leading up to this. We've had certainly questions about the federal deficit and the Tea Party movement. The social issues haven't really been front and center. This puts it right back front and center. And again, if you look at what happened with the health care debate, that was ostensibly a question about the role of the federal government and health insurance. The abortion issue exploded out of that. So we are absolutely going to see this, and we'll see it in state legislatures already. There have been about 800 different bills introduced at state legislatures dealing with abortion. It'll be state legislatures, governor's races, congressional races, absolutely Senate races. And we look at people in tough Senate races, somebody like Ben Nelson. This will be part of his debate from now on.
Ben Nelson, where have I heard that name before? I think he's come up quite a bit in the last 6 months. Patricia Murphy and Jeffrey Toobin, thanks a lot for breaking this down. We wish we could spend more time on this, but we're